Hey everyone, welcome to Mythology Explained. In today's video, we're going to discuss Merlin, first quickly discussing the character's origin, then spending most of the video on the history of the kings of Britain, the oldest surviving written story that features Merlin. Let's get into it. Merlin, the inspiration for his character, comes from Welsh folklore, derived from the wild sage trope, a person, though uncivilized, in that they prefer places unspoiled by human development, who possesses deep wisdom and hidden power. One such character, Myrddin Wyllt, Myrddin the Wild, was a bard who lived in the 6th century. His sanity cracked after witnessing the carnage of a particularly gruesome battle, disappearing and finding solace in the forest, which became his sanctuary. Merlin's earliest extant story committed to writing is Geoffrey Monmouth's History of the Kings of Britain. Interestingly, the beginning of this story is connected to the fall of Troy. Aeneas was the son of Aphrodite, and of all the Trojan heroes, only Hector was greater. Aeneas is the eponymous hero of the Aeneid, which describes his narrow escape from Troy as the Greeks sacked it, and recounts the trials and tribulations he overcame in settling in Latium, a western region in modern-day Italy. Brutus, the grandson of Aeneas, sails to Britain, settling on the island. He and those who follow him eradicate the savage giants who lived there, and following is an account of the early kings, Roman colonization and conquest, the Saxon invasion while Vortigern, the usurper, wore the crown, the reigns of Aurelius Ambrosius and his younger brother Uther Pendragon, and the time of Arthur. Vortigern facilitated the arrival of the Saxons to Britain, enlisting them as mercenaries, thereby greatly bolstering his own forces. However, this course would prove myopic, for the master's leash chafed the necks of the Saxons, who would turn against Vortigern and become an existential threat to all other people of Britain. Vortigern was betrayed and the Saxons washed over the land like a plague, assailing and pillaging a multitude of cities like London, York, Winchester falling to them. Vortigern assembled his magicians to counsel him. They told them that he must build an impregnable tower, a stout fortified place he could retreat to if he should be pressed, a contingency he could rely on should all other places of strength fall. Just as important as the construction was the location. The place had to be defensible to the extreme, naturally positioned to compromise enemy forces to the utmost. Mount Erith was chosen, and there the most skilled architects, builders, and stonemasons were gathered from far and wide. Moving forward, though, all efforts were futile. The foundation, no matter how robust, wouldn't take root, instead swallowed up by the land. Hewn rock and milled timber vanished, devoured by the earth, mystifying all those around. After this utterly bewildering event, Vortigern once again assembled his magicians. This time they counseled him to scour the country and find a boy with no father. Once found, this boy should be killed, his blood mixed with the mortar, and dripped on the stones to prevent the foundation from being consumed in the future. Eventually, Merlin is found and brought before the king. His mother explains the strange circumstances of his conception, basically that she had intimate relations with a spirit who frequently visited her in her convent. Vortigern then explains to Merlin why he has been brought to him, and Merlin, the epitome of precociousness and already imperious in his young age, equipped with a formidable penetrating intelligence, asks, almost demands, that the magicians be presented before them so that they can be exposed for the liars he knows them to be. He reproaches them for veiling their ignorance and ineffectiveness with abortive mystical solutions, then proceeding to explain that the reason the foundation can't be laid lastingly is because of an underground pool of water that lies beneath. A hole is dug, and just like was said, there was indeed a pool of water. Everyone around was now greatly impressed by Merlin, who continued with another prophetic insight, explaining that the pool should be drained, for at its bottom would be found 2 hollow stones, each one encapsulating a sleeping dragon. Now those around were no longer deeply impressed, this failing to capture the awe they felt, for it was now apparent that there was something not quite human about Merlin, something quite supernatural, his mind perceiving truth in places close to the minds of others, his sight perceiving the world in a way others were blind to. The next chapter, called The Prophecies of Merlin, recounts a series of prophecies that foretell much about the great events that are transpire in Britain in the coming years. The most famous of these is communicated through the image of 2 dragons, one red, the other white, fighting each other fang, tooth, and fire. Here's a passage from the story that describes this. As they struggled on in this way, the king ordered Ambrosius Merlin to explain just what this battle of the dragons meant. Merlin immediately burst into tears. He went into a prophetic trance and then spoke as follows. Alas for the red dragon, for its end is near. Its cavernous dens shall be occupied by the white dragon, which stand for the Saxons whom you have invited over. The red dragon represents the people of Britain, who will be overrun by the white one. For Britain's mountains and valleys shall be leveled, and the streams in its valleys shall run with blood. This battle of the two dragons was just the beginning, and many, many more prophecies were told. Merlin functioning as a conduit for some power, seemingly divine, beyond the scope of human understanding. Vortigern, understandably, was greatly concerned with his own end, of which he asked Merlin several questions. The answers he received painted a bleak picture. His enemies were mustering on all sides, his own dwindling strength hemmed in by the Saxon devastation of his kingdom, and perhaps former kingdom would be more appropriate given the dire straits he faced, and the impending arrival of Aurelius and Uther, the sons of Constantine, who was betrayed by Vortigern, these two brothers wishing to take vengeance by trapping him and burning him alive inside his own tower. After Aurelius defeated the Saxons, he began the long toil of mending the land, rebuilding its cities. One sight moved him to tears, and he ordered that a monument should be built to commemorate the dead. He was advised by an archbishop to seek out Merlin, a young man with prophetic powers and the most skilled craftsman in all the land. When Merlin arrived, Ambrosius asked that he draw back the opaque, impenetrable curtain of the present and revealed to him the events that paved the way of the future. And in response, Merlin explained that this power was not his to freely command, not at his beck and call, and that he became a vessel only at times of greatest need. Merlin tells Aurelius that he should retrieve a stone ring that surmounts a mountain in Ireland, explaining that, beyond being the best possible monument, these stones were imbued with mystical healing properties. Uther, the king's younger brother, is sent on a mission with 15,000 soldiers, brought along should the Irish not give up the stones willingly, and with Merlin, brought along so that his ingenuity could resolve on the road any difficulties that might arise from transporting massive stones hundreds of miles. By the contrivances of Merlin, the stones were dismantled, transported, and once again restored to their original condition, even their arrangement. Later, on the campaign trail, a brilliant star burned a hole in the black of the night sky. Only a single beam in the form of a fiery dragon shone from it, and from the mouth shone yet two more beams. Uther, who was leading the army, summoned Merlin to explain the meaning of this portent, and like he did all those years before Vortigern, he burst into tears and went into a trance, a state in which he pierced the veil of space and time, divulging information about events far off or about events that have yet come to pass. Aurelius was dead, poisoned, and he urged Uther to make haste in engaging the enemy, for victory would be his and the crown of all Britain with it. He explained that the dragon's head symbolized him, and that the two beams that shone from his mouth symbolized his two children, a son and a daughter. Following his victory and coronation, he took a new name, Pendragon, meaning a dragon's head, for it was beneath the dragon's head that Merlin proclaimed his ascent to the throne. Uther became utterly enamored with Aegerna, the wife of Gorlois, Duke of Cornwall. Guided by the mad passion that blazed inside him, he set his forces against the Duke, even though they were allies. His army much smaller, the Duke avoided meeting Uther in open combat, instead fortifying and garrisoning his castles, while he waited for reinforcements from Ireland. His land was being burned, but despite this, his chief concern was for his wife, whom he left at their coastal stronghold, a nigh impregnable fortress with a pinched entrance where a few good men could hold against a sea of soldiers. Unable to crack this quandary with his army, his vast forces neutralized by defensive advantage, he summoned Merlin to produce a solution, which came in the form of potions that would give Uther the exact likeness of Gorlois. Disguised as the Duke, Uther was granted entry into the stronghold, and he bedded Aegerna that night, conceiving Arthur. Gorlois was killed, his forces defeated, and Uther claimed Aegerna, both of them united by a deep love, a daughter later born to them. Though Merlin is perhaps best known today for his relationship with Arthur, in this story, the two of them aren't connected. The last mention of Merlin of any real significance comes on that night he transformed Uther. allowing the king to satisfy the carnal desires that drove him to war. Later, Arthur ascends to the throne and destroys the Saxons, beating them so thoroughly that they were unable to recover any semblance of their strength for years and years. Arthur's military exploits extended much farther than the island of Britain, conquest taking him across the Channel, where he conquered most of northern Europe. He claimed victory after victory, and by his sword peace was ushered in, a peace that lasted until the Romans once again demanded that Britain pay tribute. This brought about a war that resulted in Roman defeat, and Arthur was to be the next emperor, but trouble back in Britain drew him away. Mordred, his nephew, seduced Guinevere and seized the throne for himself. Arthur kills Mordred, but this exacts a heavy toll, for the struggle sees him suffer a mortal wound. In the end, Arthur is born to the island of Avalon, where he makes his cousin Constantine king. And that's it for this video. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if there's a topic you'd like covered. Thanks for watching.